Welcome to the i5 podcast. We're going to do a special Christmas one today, where we've looked at a Christmas special that has, well, to be honest, it doesn't really it doesn't generate a lot of conversation, but it does have a cult audience, so we both decided to watch it. This one was actually a big part of my childhood, but Jim, I think you saw it for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, where we grew up, we used to have that show, but it was very
Hmm.
badly dubbed. But while I was a kid, I didn't think much of it because I thought it was boring just by looking at the, how do you call it, the ads for that show.
Yeah.
But after talking with you and you told me a little bit about the show, it has surprisingly amount of depth to it. Not only the
Hmm.
characters but the story as well,
Yeah.
and it touches on some very realistic and mature topics that are actually problematic even
Hmm.
today in the society we live into.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We are, of course, talking about the Hey Arnold Christmas special. Just before we actually go into the Christmas special itself, just a quick point. I do remember as a kid, there was a newspaper article. I couldn't really find it, but I remember seeing it, and Hey Arnold was voted like the most boring cartoon on TV at the time. But I think that's because, as you say, the storylines were quite realistic, down to earth, and dealt with mental health problems and all kinds. There was a complexity to the stories, and the humor was quite surreal. I think maybe kids sometimes found it boring because maybe some of them didn't understand how just in depth the topics were and the stories were as well.
not only that, but I think it was maybe too close to reality
Mm,
because kids in general, especially in young age, in young age,
mm.
they want flashy, exciting stuff. And Hey Arnold was not focused so much on action; it was more focused on real problems.
Mm. It did have the odd surreal episode, but yeah, I think that was a fair point to it. But with the actual Christmas episode in itself, it does have a massive cult following. A lot of people I know have never heard of it, and they haven't bothered watching it. But I personally think it was one of the better episodes. If you're ready, we'll just go straight into the review of it.
Yeah,
So as soon as it actually begins, it's got a nice intro. It creates an immediate atmosphere of Christmas akin to really old American cartoons like you saw in the 80s, like Charlie Brown and stuff, showing all the kids throwing snowballs at each other and showing this really happy-go-lucky, snow scene with everyone enjoying Christmas and things. And it does catch the Christmas atmosphere perfectly. And then when it goes to the actual apartment building, that's the main area of the actual series. It's even more lovely. Even the direct opening scene of just the clock tower as well, with the snow pouring. But what really reflects the actual show, and just to get to it, I don't know if you remember because you're really into music, how the theme just trails off and becomes really sad because it goes into the actual apartment building and it starts showing Mr. Wynn actually going inside the building. And it, has you hear the flashback he has of some helicopters with really sad music in the girl's voice. And I just thought it captured the tone of the actual show just perfectly.
yeah, I would agree
Because
so well.
as we were saying before, one of the things about Hey Arnold, it dealt with serious issues like poverty, isolation, loneliness, insecurity, self acceptance, to name a few. It did balance it with humor, but like I said, it establishes how it more or less tells the audience it's going to be more of the same. But the thing with Hey Arnold, it really did it so well. And it kind of shows as well that serious problems don't really take a Christmas break. You basically knew it was going to be something serious with the actual Christmas special, and up until that point, Mr. Wynn wasn't really a developed character. But I'll go more into that a bit later. Obviously, once it does that, it just goes straight into establishing the subplots in the different, well, not even so much subplots, the different story arcs. There's basically two. You've got Hey Arnold's and Gerald's, and you've got Helga's, and how the two of them merge at the end. So it goes straight to Helga, who has like the commercialized attitude towards Christmas, and it basically just gets how every series, every Christmas special seems to talk about how commercialized Christmas is. Hey Arnold seems to just get it out of the way in the opening 20 seconds, using Helga as the actual facilitator of it. So I do think it's funny when she starts talking about shopping like a barbarian, where it like gives the image of all the Americans fighting each other over Cabbage Patch Kids and Furbies and shit.
I mean, yeah, and to be honest, this picture hasn't changed much
No,
at
it
all.
hasn't.
We saw that in during COVID with the massive madness, because I cannot think of another word to describe it, where that people had over toilet paper.
Oh yeah, the
And
frenzy for it.
yeah, we see it every year as well. Whenever a new iPhone comes out,
Mm,
people actually camp outside of the shop for days, and you see huge rows outside of the shops just so that they can be the first to get it.
mm,
And this happens almost every year now. So,
yeah,
and the cartoon is how old? Safe to assume it's at least 20 years old.
I want to say 1995, 1996.
Damn. Okay, so that's quite old, and
Mm.
shows you that even though our lives are drastically different since then, overall, in terms of behavior, not much have changed
Oh yeah.
in some
I mean,
areas.
even the Cabbage Patch Kids. I'm sure they were the '80s, and you had adults like tearing them out of kids' hands in the shops and all kinds.
Yep.
And even I remember when I was growing up, you would get people queuing outside of game and stuff for the latest Call of Duty.
Or the latest WoW expansions.
Oh god, yeah. Obviously in Hey Arnold and stuff, it's yeah, Helga establishes the reference perfectly. Or the writers use Helga to establish the reference perfectly, because it looks natural. The way that she wants is the Nancy Spumoni snow boots. Like they're the MacGuffin, the in Christmas item that all the kids want, like sold out in the city and everything.
Mm.
So in obviously the snow boots are a key component of the actual story. And then you have Arnold and Gerald's conversation almost immediately later, and I thought it was really unique as well that the show Hey Arnold, the first scene of the Christmas special goes to Helga, not Hey Arnold. But I think it was the good choice. And then obviously goes to Arnold and Gerald's conversation, which is in complete contrast, where effectively Gerald's got the whole family a tie, and Arnold's, telling them that the presents need to be unique, not so much tokenistic or, having a cash value and just palming it on them. A present that is special, which is a decent meaning, which is a noble idea, but it's in complete contrast. And then Gerald obviously goes and takes the ties back. So I like that immediate contrast. And then it's after that, sorry, that I think it shows Mr. Huynh going into the door, which just changes the atmosphere of the town because the even the snow effects sound colder. The picture seems a lot darker, and it just shows how happy Christmas can seem for some people. But then if you're having your own problems at Christmas, the entire atmosphere can seem miserable. And obviously, you hear the isolation and the weather effects and things for the character.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it was done so well. Obviously, the next scene it sets it up in a realistic way. I'm not doing scene for scene, by the way, because we'd be here all day. I've highlighted the story really is once it sets up, which it takes about 7 minutes to do, the story just flows very quickly. So it's really just the setup we're talking about before we just get to the end. And again, it's a more realistic way because it's the awkwardness of the Secret Santa. I mean, we've all had to do Secret Santas at work. I'm assuming. Have you ever had to do one of those?
Um. No.
Oh, they're awkward as hell. When you get someone
Ever?
like I got someone from a different department and I knew nothing about her. Like, well, what the hell do I get her?
Yeah. No.
Um,
Like I'm very, very awkward with presents to begin with. Not only getting them, but like accepting them as well. So it's always been
mm,
a very difficult sort of
yeah.
uh, part of the holidays. Thankfully, the
Mm,
last years, due to various occasions, situations, I didn't have to take to get any Christmas presents.
mm,
Uh, like I usually just take presents from people when I see fit. Like if I see something that that person might need,
mm,
just gonna straight up get it and gift it rather than waiting a specific time period to do so. But that's like me
yeah.
being awkward and weird. But yeah,
I think again, I think a lot of people would sympathize. To be honest, I think what was really good about this scene as well was the contrast. You have the happy party atmosphere of the grandma playing the piano, and you've got Arnold's granddad, picking names out the jar for like the Secret Santa, and they're all having a good time. And
yeah,
in
and
contrast,
also in that scene, someone gave him coal.
oh, that's later on.
Oh, sorry, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
like
I got
no, it's
confused.
fine. Like no, it's fine. Like at the end, Ernie, the demolitionist, basically gives Oscar a call because he doesn't like him.
Ah,
Even the language is quite harsh. You'd never get that now because the idea with Oscar is he's unemployed and he's the negative stereotype of a moocher. And like lives with his wife, but his wife works and stuff. He doesn't do anything, and he's like really selfish and everything. And the idea with Ernie is Ernie doesn't like him, and the fact he calls him a bum. It's not something you genuinely hear in a Christmas special for children.
No.
But like you've got all of that like happy scenery and stuff, and then in complete contrast, it totally changes when Arnold draws Mr. Wynn and you see Wynn standing by the fire, not part of it, not part of the actual gathering. And again, that they're very good at that. Just having happy scene here, and then within the same scene, putting a contrasting setting in of someone being utterly isolated and alone, despite the fact they're in a group of people, and they do it with such precision, even when they change the color palette and everything. So again, just like another striking scene, and obviously this sets up the story because Hey Arnold draws Mr. Quinn. He knows nothing about him, and just to go back into the character depth, Mr. Quinn at this point in the series, there hadn't been a lot of character expansion with him. He was basically the lint guy who would always go, "This is lint, your lint," basically complaining about people's lint left over in the washing machines. And he was kind of a meme. He'd had no development, and a lot of people had the assumption that he was actually Chinese because there was no information in relation to his background whatsoever. He was just Mr. Wynn who lived in the building, who was a bit eccentric. And this was genuinely the first I think this was the first character expansion that he actually got. So I think, for me, and I think you said the same thing, this is why we've chosen to look at it on this channel, because it's a good conversation point. When Hey Arnold decides oh, that was the other thing as well. Before I get to that, just the little details, like there's a scene where Arnold and Gerald are talking, and Arnold's like, "How do I find out what he wants?" And Gerald's saying, "Just talk to him." But they're having a snowball fight while doing it, and you actually see Gerald throw a snowball, and you hear a window break
Oh
because
yeah.
they're having a snowball fight at night. And I'm just like, you don't.
Also gonna mention. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I'm just gonna say you don't really see details like that because when the window breaks, they don't care and they just continue.
The other thing that stood out to me, because mind you, this is the first episode of Arnold that I've seen that I remember.
Mm,
I might have watched it when I was a kid, but don't remember much. So
mm,
I noticed that his hat, Arnold's friend's hat, he
mm,
had like a patch on it, indicating that he doesn't come from like a rich family.
Gerald is he comes from a working family, not overly rich. They didn't want to. I basically the only rich one was Rhonda. That, to be honest, it looks like the kind of part of the city where everyone just kind of gets by. A lot of it doesn't really strike you as the nice area of the city. And that again, what you said, yeah, it doesn't come from a rich family. All of the kids had their problems, and all of the kids, there was only one who came from a really rich background. So that was the other contrasting thing about it. That was the other thing that stood out rather about this cartoon. The kids didn't always come from happy situations. Gerald came from one of the stronger ones, but his family wasn't exactly rich either. Arnold himself, not being a typical main character, it was the first time I ever saw a character who didn't have any parents in a show. He lived with the grandparents in an apartment building. So I hadn't seen the main character not come from the standard nuclear family before.
Hmm.
So it was stood out. But I think as well, what was good about this show was that you don't need to have seen any of the earlier episodes to actually understand the special.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, that's the mark of a good show. But yeah, you're right. It's the little details like that show that all of these characters just don't come from privileged backgrounds, which, to be honest, is very down to earth. But the show, but when they have that conversation and Arnold goes to win, like Mr. Quinn just seems so nice when he's like, "Oh no, I don't have any candy to give you," and he's like, "Do you like candy?" "Oh no, it's bad for my stomach." I mean, I can identify with that. Or when he goes like, "Oh no, I don't need a sweater." When Arnold asks, "Do you want a sweater?" and he goes, "I've got plenty. Do you want one?" And that's when Wynn tells him about how he used to have a daughter. And this is the crux of it, right? The show doesn't actually say Vietnam. They're very careful with this. They don't say Vietnam. They don't reference Vietnam. But the show basically goes from 0 to 1,000 because it shows Mr. Wynn in his village as a young man, referencing a war in the north that was going towards where he was in the country. You see silhouettes of who are very obviously the NBA, the North Vietnamese army, and later on, like seconds later, it basically shows you what is obviously meant to be Saigon, and that he and some others kick down the door to get past the Americans keeping the civilians out. And obviously, it shows you him basically handing his baby over to the actual American soldier on the helicopter. And then you've got that very moving scene of the helicopter pilots, shouting the name of the city they're in. Obviously, you don't hear that, but Quinn relays it to Arnold. And when you actually see the actual scene of the city under siege, you hear like the electric guitar riffs and everything to show the anarchy of it. Or sorry, to present an atmosphere of anarchy to it. And I just thought that was quite a serious. Well, like I said, that went. I remember just watching that as a kid, thinking that went from 0 to 1,000 because
Yeah.
it's not your typical background story for a character in a kids cartoon.
No, no. Like it caught me by surprise because you told me
Hmm.
it's a Christmas special of a kids show, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised because I
Hmm.
think it's quite educational to show these topics and to talk about these topics in this medium.
Yeah. No,
Otherwise,
absolutely.
this is also like part of education because otherwise you grow up insensitized and it's just yeah. I think it's a good. I think more shows, more kids shows should touch on topics like that.
Yeah. Now, hey Arnold, they are very delicate about it. As said before during Quinn's story, if you guys in the comments see any reference to Vietnam, aside from the one that Jim and I are going to mention in a second, by all means let us know in the comments. But I can't find any dialogue in the show which says the word Vietnam. Like they don't say Vietnam, they don't say where Quinn is specifically, they don't make any reference to his nationality. They basically just say he just says my country and there was a war in the north. There is reference, I think I showed you the screenshot. I'll post it here. There's a poster later on in the show when Helga's eavesdropping on Hey Arnold at the end. I'll post a screenshot and it has a poster referencing called Saigon Helicopter. And
Mm.
I'm just wondering if that's an Easter egg just to confirm that it is Viet. I mean, it's obviously Vietnam they're talking about in the fall of Saigon, but I wonder if that's just to confirm it to the audience as like an Easter egg to find.
Potentially.
Potentially. Either way, it's an interesting one. But just as a side note into American culture, I've been in lecture rooms in the US where fist fights have broken out between students, where also, and I've heard horror stories of it as well, where they've been talking about Vietnam. Vietnam to this day is still a very controversial topic in American classrooms and even between members of the American public. Don't get us wrong, most people can just discuss it civilly, but it can get hostile. Like it was a very polarizing issue, which makes it even more surprising that it would feature in a kid's cartoon. But Vietnam is part of American history,
Mm.
and it is part the conflict is part of their society, and I'm sure there are Vietnamese Americans who came over to America with a story similar to this. The fall of Saigon historically was brutal, which again, it's very surprising to say the least that Hey Arnold would use this as a backstory for a character. But I've got to say that it's in line with the consistency of the show, and it's just very daring in a good way.
Yep.
And it was shown at half four. It was shown at half four in the afternoon on Nickelodeon. So with that one, you now have the story. The objective for Hey Arnold, or part of it, is to get Mr. Quinn a Christmas gift and reunite him with his daughter. So then we get to the what every Christmas special needs is a villain. Enter Mr. Bailey, the government worker. Though I've got to say that when they go into the government building, do you remember the party they have with like buckets over their heads and trash cans over their heads and stuff, and they're all wasted?
Yeah, yeah.
I like all I thought immediately was the Tories during COVID with the parties, like all the Christmas parties during the pandemic.
Yeah. It's it, it does really fit.
Mm. And I just thought it was really hilarious. But then they do find like the lone guy, Mr. Bailey, working on his computer, grumpy as hell, and he's a proper bastard, and he just doesn't want to.
I mean,
He
not
just does.
necessarily bastard. I think he illustrates, well, not illustrates, but he represents a lot of the people who tend to work heavily on that
Mm,
period, even till the last minute.
mm,
And it's like you're already fed up with work, and you have this
yeah,
random person that shows up that asks you to go the extra mile to do something
I
extra, and you're already fed up with it. So it's not
mm,
that he was a bastard. I
I
didn't think
think
he was a bastard, but I think they tried. He represents all the people that
mm,
work, like, for example, even in retail, where they
mm,
work up until the last minute on Christmas because tend to do like Christmas shopping at the very last second.
At the start that's the case, but I think at the end when they do all of his shopping that he should have done himself and give it to him, and the only thing they don't have is the snow boots, and it's very understandable why they don't have them. And he basically says he's not doing it. I think that's rotten because they've just done 99% of his shopping for him.
It is, but I give them props to that because that
Mm,
basically subliminal message that never trust
yeah.
the government.
I mean, obviously in the
Yeah.
story they need it. They need to do it, but yeah, like never trust the government. He reminds me of a video game NPC. You know what I mean? How you just can't reason with them. It's like, no, I need these 200 of this item. But it pretty much sets it up. But yeah, it also shows how he's got problems as well. I think he's a bastard for that at the end. But yeah, it also is a very real reminder that some people do have to work during Christmas, especially in the government. So now you've got so now you have the MacGuffin, which is the shopping. He makes a deal with Arnold, saying, "I'll do your Christmas shopping for you if if you." Sorry, Arnold says, "I'll do the Christmas shopping if you do the search when I find, if you do the search for Mr. Wynn's daughter." They make the agreement. So now you've got the story for the episode, and it shows like a little montage of Arnold doing, all of the shopping and all of that. So now you've got the actual story. The mechanism is at some point Arnold goes into a video game store or something where they meet Helga, and the plot lines connect because Helga's subplot line is she wants to buy a gift for Arnold, and she does she pretty much writes beautiful sonnets when she starts talking about how much she loves him. Like it is a bit
Yeah.
unreal how she switches to that, and they meet up in the store because she's buying a video game for him, and obviously Arnold doesn't know she's doing it anonymously, and then obviously Gerald basically just says to her, a gift should be more personal. This is just something, that has a cash value and has no real meaning. And then they drop the list. So that's how Helga realizes that Arnold needs the snow boots, which comes in later. Eventually, Arnold gets most of the shopping done, but then it comes to trying to get the snow boots. Has no concept that there's none in the city, which was established earlier on in the actual show. Like, this is the thing as well. They really do set a framework for the characters to interact with, like very early on. So when he goes into the store, I think you commented on this as well, where like the staff actually just laugh at him when he asks if they have any.
Yeah. I mean, these were the actual dicks
Yeah,
for behaving the way they did.
to be honest, it reminds me of the Games Workshop during the Primaris Eliminator shortage a couple of years ago, the snipers, where if you went into a Games Workshop and asked if they had any, they would just laugh at you because they were sold out everywhere.
Oh, damn. They actually laughed at
Yeah,
you? Shit.
yeah, because like everyone, because if you were just a casual who wasn't keeping up with the sales trends, and you just happened to see an advert for them in a magazine or on the internet or something, you weren't aware that they'd been sold out for a few weeks because you would assume that Games Workshop could create enough stock. But yeah, I think that some retailers are that unreal with the staff where they can barely hold a straight face. But I thought that was quite a good analogy for the shortage that they have. Obviously, after that, the dilemma is now there. Arnold can't get the snow boots, so he can't fulfill the obligation to the guy. And so when he tries to, hand in all the presents that he's bought, the guy basically welches on the deal because he didn't get the snow boots, which again I think is quite fucking harsh because they have
Yeah.
just gone out and spent their Christmas Eve doing their Christmas shopping. Gerald even friendship as well because Gerald gives up his Christmas Eve to actually help Arnold do this. So like I thought that was pretty bad form of the guy, but again you wouldn't have a story. But I also like the fact it goes into Helga's perspective and how she's experiencing Christmas. And again the theme of isolation. Because Arnold's not having a fun time because he can't get win his gift. I mean, did you notice when a bit of background information here? Basically, Helga is the second child. She's the least favorite. Our older sister is the favorite because the older sister is supposed to
Oh,
be
yeah, I
much.
sort of picked up on that as well because when she went
Yeah,
home, everyone was praising her sister quite significantly, and they
yeah,
were all around her. She was the
yeah,
center of attention, whereas Helga was more of a background character in the
yeah.
in the
That's
family.
that's a good point. She's a background character within her own family. And did you see all the certificates and ribbons that Olga has on the back wall?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, Helga herself seems really isolated within her family. Funny story as well. You know the mother.
Yeah.
The reason why she sings slightly off key and she seems a bit slurred with her speech, she was supposed to be an alcoholic, but they thought that was too serious for a kid's show. So they had to replace the drinks she was drinking with like a smoothie. So in the show before this, she would always say, I need a smoothie. Reality, it was I need a beer.
Damn.
Yeah, the mother was supposed to be an alkie, and the dad is like a proper fanatical business owner. He owns Big Bob's Beepers, so he's kind of like the main business shark in the town. So he's not the nicest of people. So yeah, it's she like she can be horrible, but she has got a decent heart as well. And even Olga is not that bad a person really, but it's kind of a problematic family that she comes from. But the idea of Christmas, the mother does get her the snow boots as well, which is kind of like, because her family can afford them. And the other thing is, Helga must have some fucking money if she was going to buy Arnold a video game in 1996,
Yeah.
especially like the latest one. Did you actually see the Cyberpunk poster as well in the actual shop?
No, but I did notice it as soon as you pointed it out,
Mm, like that
and it's
was
quite hilarious.
it's very ominous. I didn't realize they were waiting for it even back then.
Yep.
And then obviously, it's that moment where Helga's got exactly what she wanted. It's the snow boots that her mum gives, and then you see her running out into the snow, which is jumping up and down. And then she has the crisis of conscience. Again, it's presented really well. And then it flips to the contrast of she's got what she wants, she's happy, she's got a moral dilemma. And then it goes to Arnold lying on the bed. Like I said, it's the comparison and the contrast between both of the characters' story arcs and eventually them merging. You've got Arnold lying on the bed with the tragic music and the helicopter's sound effects because he knows he's failed and he's thinking of Wynne giving his daughter up. And but Arnold, even though he's probably going to get gifts and things, his Christmas is effectively ruined because he couldn't give Mr. Wynne what he really wanted.
Yep.
And I
But
just thought,
even
God
then,
damn.
his friend says something really admirable and nice, that it's more about the effort you've put in, even though you didn't get the result you wanted. It wasn't all worthless,
Yeah, and that's
which
a
is
key
also quite
scene.
a very nice message.
Yeah.
Because in real life, truth be told, is that your efforts aren't always rewarded.
It's akin to a Simpsons episode where Bart spends all night revising for a test and still fails, because before then there'd never been any entertainment of the idea that a kid can try their hardest and still fail despite trying their hardest. And I think that's a really good message. Sometimes you are going to fail, and it doesn't matter what you do. And that's when obviously Helga eavesdrops on him and learns why Arnold needs the snow boots, which then goes to the guy, Mr. Bailey, leaving the actual government building, and Helga basically confronting him. And she literally just dumps the snow boots in his arms and goes, "Come on, we've got a kid to find." And obviously, Bailey just says, "What are you kidding? I'm going home." And I thought what was a really good scene is when he's at the taxi, just walking past her, and he signals the taxi and he's looking. And I think Helga says something along the lines of, I think she says, "Look, you can go home and enjoy Christmas, but there's a kid that believes in Christmas miracles, and he's going to stop believing or something. And you have the ability to give him that miracle." And that's not how she phrases it, but it's something along those lines. And I think it's really striking when they're quite limited with their animation. They just have Mr. Bailey just have a complete character, well, not a character change, but a realization, and he just turns around, and you see his face staring forward as he's thinking about what she says.
Yeah, I
Uh,
picked up on that also.
yeah,
And
that was
props
such
to them
such a good
for
scene.
props to them for managing to illustrate that in his expression, because as you said,
Yeah.
the animation back then was very, very basic.
And then I thought it was a good move. I thought what was a good move was Helga saying before that, "You and I can stay up all night," because now Helga's giving up her Christmas Eve night to assist the guy. So Hey Arnold was the one that triggered it, but in the end, it's Helga and the guy who actually reunite Wynn's daughter. The implication is that Helga has a first role in assisting the dude find my Wynn, the name of his daughter. So it's implied she gives up her Christmas Eve night, probably most of her day because she'd need the sleep. And then obviously it goes to the Christmas party where, Arnold's looking so ashamed of himself when really he's got nothing to be ashamed of. Because obviously they go through the presents and there's nothing there for Wynn. And Hey Arnold gets up to say to Mr. Wynn, "I'm sorry, I couldn't reunite your daughter with you." But even before he gets a chance to, Quinn's like saying, "No, no, it really doesn't matter. I don't want anything. It's okay." Because Quinn's just a lovely guy. And again, it's that scene of him by the fire. And then you probably get one of the most emotional moments in the Christmas special where the granddad goes to answer the door, saying it's probably a Yuletide prankster. Obviously, you know what's coming, but it is downplayed really well. And it's so satisfying seeing the ending of his daughter walk in and them getting reunited.
Satisfying and heartwarming.
Mm.
It was a wholesome moment on the episode.
Yeah, like I thought it was just such a good. It was just done so well, and at the end as well when they start speaking to each other in. I'm assuming they speak to each other in Vietnamese. I'm not sure if it is Vietnamese. I didn't actually check. If someone knows, please drop it in the credits. Please drop it in the comments. But it was just a nice, satisfying ending. One thing I did pick up on is when Quinn is talking to his daughter, and Hey Arnold just goes, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Quinn." Quinn just keeps on talking to his daughter, which is very understandable, and Arnold is just smiling. And that's a testament to Arnold's character because he didn't do it for Mr. Quinn's gratitude. It's not even entirely clear at that point that Mr. Quinn knows Arnold had anything to do with it.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. I
Yeah.
think that was the point of the Christmas of the Christmas spirit and the
Hmm.
Christmas miracle, that someone can, because just how Mr. Ming didn't know about Arnold getting involved, Arnold didn't know that Helga got involved, which is
Hmm.
like what his friend's saying, that you must be having a Christmas angel looking over you.
Yes.
And at that point, the scene goes back to Helga,
Yeah. And her
which
standing outside
she
the door.
standing outside the door, and I assume that she couldn't hear or see the whole scene
Hmm.
transpiring, but she still seemed happy and said "Merry Christmas, Arnold."
Hmm.
But I think this is like the message that you can always put in the extra effort to do some good, and even if you're not recognized by the person you're helping, like hearing thank you or something
Hmm.
like that, it still is worth it.
Yeah. I kind of get the impression that she's the one that took my win to the actual door where Mr. Quinn is.
Yeah,
I get the impression that she's the one that took my the daughter to the actual apartment building. But the way Arnold says "Merry Christmas, Mr. Quinn" and then steps back, she's the same. You know, it's the same scene for scene. She doesn't care if Arnold knows she did it or not. As you were saying, you know, it's the "Merry Christmas, Arnold," but he's never going to hear it. I just don't, like I said, I think it's bringing, because Helga and Arnold were kind of always the central characters in the show. And in case anyone's wondering, at the end of the spoiler alert, at the end of the movie that was last released, they do get together. So I think it does a really good job of establishing their characters. Really, I just think it's a wonderful Christmas special of two characters
yeah,
being very selfless.
it's a very nice story. It has
Mm,
good messages, and it's not over the top, you know.
mm.
Like at the
It didn't.
very end, Arnold had it in his mind that he failed.
Mm, yeah.
Not to mention that his grandpa actually got called for his Christmas present. That's like,
Oh,
yeah.
that is funny. It's not the grandpa that gets the call. It's Oscar.
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
Oscar.
No, it's
And
fine.
I also picked up like that Arnold's family is also a bit poor, because there were like, I
Yeah.
think, one or two presents in total for under the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
So not everyone actually got presents. Arnold didn't get a present, as far as I remember from the episode.
Mm. Yeah, I imagine he's probably got a few on Christmas Day. It's just, as you say, I don't. I think it shows. I think it's just reflect on Arnold's character that he doesn't care what he gets.
Yeah, but
But
the reason why
also,
I pointed
mm,
it is I
mm,
pointed out that is because I compare the scene of the House of Arnold to the House of Helga, which was like,
yeah,
as you say,
yeah,
completely almost opposite to one another.
yeah. Well, Helga's family, yeah, as you say, it's yeah. I think I said before, Helga's family has got money because the richest one was Wanda, but Helga's family weren't exactly poor either because the dad owned like a made. It was either a chain of department stores or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, yeah, as we were saying earlier, it wasn't exactly the richest of neighborhoods that the show was set in, and the kids did have financial limitations, and sometimes increases in living like bus fares or school meals and stuff was taken into account. the kids basically spent a lot of time on the street, and the show went into why,
which
if
again
if
you
that
don't
made
see
sense.
often. Yeah,
Mm,
you don't see often in shows, and yeah, but it was a very very nice episode, especially for Christmas.
mm. I would honestly recommend to the audience that people do watch it and maybe add it to the collection. It is a good standalone show. You don't need to have seen any prior episodes to understand it. Also, just one last thing as well. I think it's diversity done right.
Oh yeah,
If
yeah,
if if that makes sense, it's not forced diversity. It's not tokenistic diversity. It's it's actually done right with balance.
very true. It was so natural. Even I didn't pick up on it.
Yeah, I only I've seen it hundreds of times, but it's been about a couple. It's been about a good decade since I have, and it was the second rewatching of it the other night where I just thought of that. I was like, yeah, in the '90s we did have diversity, and it was done right. It was integrated very well into the storylines. Even Gerald, Arnold's best mate,
Yeah,
like you don't Phoebe, Helga's best mate. I don't know if you remember Phoebe. She's in it. She was a major character in the show, by the way. It's just in the Christmas special. She featured for about the opening scene. She was Helga's sidekick, basically, but Phoebe herself was a genius. The one with glasses at the start, who Helga's talking
yeah,
to.
yeah.
You, Phoebe. I think her family is Chinese. I might be wrong about that. It's no Japanese. I think she's Japanese, actually. I would have to. I can't quite remember, but it's been decades since I've seen it. But you've got Phoebe, you had Phoebe, you had Gerald, you've got Mr. Quinn. So it was diversity done really well. It wasn't forced. Arnold's skin color wasn't changed just for the sake of it. It was done with great balance, and Gerald was also a very good character in it. And also in
Hmm.
terms of gender representation, because to be honest, let's be honest here, Helga becomes the MVP at the end.
Yep, the unsung hero.
Yep. So it wasn't so, it's not as forced as say what the apparent leak of the Moon Knight issue 30 is, where they kill off Moon Knight and replace him with a lesbian. So that
Don't
that
go
was
into Marvel like,
I
oh
won't.
god, yeah,
But just as a quick comparison, this was diversity done really well, and that
yeah.
was just the last thing I really had to say on it. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Not really.
No, cool. Well, this was the i5 podcast. My name is Jonathan, and I hosted alongside my co-host Jim.
Hello.
And this was the review of the Hey Arnold Christmas special. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you watch it.
Yeah, have a lovely Christmas holiday and be safe.
Yep. Merry Christmas, guys. Bye now.
Bye bye.